The boy's name was once Lycinus, a sound that carried the scent of sun-warmed figs and the whisper of the Aegean Sea. But a name is a possession, and he owned nothing. Not even the memories that flickered like dying embers in the cold dread of the present. He stood on a rough-hewn wooden platform, the splintered edges digging into the bare soles of his feet. Before him, Rome roared, a beast of marble, power, and 1,000 churning voices. He was just a morsel, waiting to be devoured. The air in the Forum Boarium was thick and foul, a putrid cocktail of sweat, animal dung from the nearby cattle market, and the cloying perfume of the wealthy matrons who paused their litters to inspect the day's offerings. The auctioneer, a man with a face like a slab of raw meat, barked out descriptions in a Latin that grated on Lycinus' ears, so different from the fluid Greek of his homeland. He didn't need to understand the words. The gestures were universal. A rough hand tilted his chin up, forcing his gaze toward the crowd. Fingers pried his mouth open, inspecting his teeth as if he were a horse. His tunic, already a thin and flimsy thing, was pulled aside to show the unblemished skin of his shoulders. He was 12 years old, and his only value lay in the smooth curve of his cheek, the dark curl of his hair, and the terror in his eyes that his captors mistook for docility. He remembered the voyage, the suffocating darkness of the ship's hold, the stench of sickness, and the weeping of other children torn from their homes in the provinces. Some were spoils of a forgotten skirmish in Thrace. Others, like him, were sold by families whose poverty had become a blade at their throats. They had been told it was for survival, a chance at a better life. But as Lycinus stood on that platform, under the scrutinizing gaze of men whose eyes held no warmth, no flicker of shared humanity, he understood. This was not a life. It was the end of one.
The truth of what?
A voice,
Who are you talking
sharp
about?
and laced with aristocratic boredom, cut through the din. Lycinus flinched. A man, draped in a toga of impossibly white wool edged with purple, approached the platform. He moved with an indolent grace, his sandals slapping softly against the grimy cobblestones. He didn't look at Lycinus' teeth or his shoulders. His gaze was appraising, like an artist studying a piece of marble, seeing not what it was, but what it could be carved into.
All along,
the man circled the platform, his eyes missing nothing. He saw the boy's fine bones, the elegant line of his neck, the wide, dark eyes that held the memory of a sapphire sea.
like when we're up there.
He saw beauty, and in Rome, beauty was a currency more valuable and more dangerous than gold. The aristocrat exchanged a few quiet words with an aide, who then began to bid. The price climbed, the numbers echoing a truth Lycinus was only beginning to comprehend. The satirist's bitter jest, whispered among the city's cynics, was no exaggeration. A curly-haired boy from the east indeed cost more than a farm. He was not being bought for labor in a field, or to quarry stone. He was being purchased as an ornament, a piece of living art destined for a world of silent, gilded servitude. The final bid was struck. The sound of the gavel was the sound of a tomb sealing shut. Lycinus was led away, a ghost in the making, leaving the roar of the Forum behind for the suffocating silence of a life in the shadow of power. He was taken not to a sprawling villa on the Palatine Hill, as he had expected, but to a secluded estate on the outskirts of the city. Here, there were no grand mosaics or chattering senators, only quiet corridors and the watchful eyes of severe-looking tutors. His days became a regiment of relentless training. He was taught to move without a sound, to pour wine without spilling a drop, to hold a silver tray for hours without a tremor. He learned to play the lyre. His fingers coaxed into plucking melodies of haunting sadness. He was taught poetry, but only to recite, never to create. His voice, his hands, his very posture were being sculpted, refined, and stripped of any trace of his former self. He was being transformed into a Delicatus, a favored boy, a thing of beauty and obedience. But beneath the veneer of this polished education, a colder, more terrifying truth began to reveal itself. He was not the only boy there. Others, with the same haunted eyes, moved through the halls. They were from Syria, Cappadocia, Phrygia, lands known for producing boys of a certain prized appearance. And sometimes, one of them would disappear. They would be taken away in the dead of night, and when they returned weeks later, if they returned at all, they were different. Their voices, once breaking with the uncertainty of youth, were now unnaturally high and clear. Profound emptiness had settled in their gaze. They were called spadons, eunuchs. Lycinus saw the fear in their eyes and felt it reflected in his own soul. He learned the purpose of this brutal practice through fragmented whispers in the darkness of the dormitories. It was about control. It preserved the boyish features the masters prized, erasing the threat of manhood. It ensured absolute dependency, severing any hope of one day having a family, a legacy, or a life of one's own. It was the ultimate expression of ownership, transforming a human being into a permanent symbol of submission, an object that could never challenge its master's lineage or authority. The Lex Cornelia, the Roman law that technically forbade castration, was a joke in these circles. The elite operated above such trivialities. The day his master, the agent for an unseen, powerful figure, finally deemed him ready, Lycinus felt a cold knot of dread tightening his stomach. He was bathed, perfumed, and dressed in a tunic of fine sea green silk. He was being sent to the Imperial Palace, a gift from the Emperor himself. The name Nero was a whisper of terror throughout the city, a name associated with artistic indulgence and breathtaking cruelty. He was to become another of his treasures. The palace was a labyrinth of impossible luxury and suffocating intrigue. Marble walls gleamed, fountains whispered in hidden courtyards, and the air was filled with the incense of power. Here he saw them, the Emperor's slaves, the living decorations. Boys no older than him stood like statues in alcoves, their faces masks of serene obedience. He saw the spadons serving wine, their movements silent and graceful, their eyes holding a deep, ancient sorrow. He was now one of them, a beautiful being in a collection of beautiful things. His first presentation to Nero was a blur of terror. The Emperor, a man of bushy build, with pale, unsettling eyes, regarded him not as a person, but as a new acquisition. He made him recite a poem by Ovid, his voice trembling. He had him play the lyre, his fingers slick with sweat. Nero smiled, a thin, predatory expression. It was a smile of satisfaction, the look of a collector who has just acquired a rare and flawless gem. But it was in the private quarters that the true nature of his fate became clear. He saw another boy, one who was always at Nero's side. The boy's name was Sporus. He was dressed in the lavish garments of an empress, his face painted, his hair elaborately styled. Nero called him Sabina, the name of his dead wife. He would speak to Sporus in public, hold his hand, a grotesque parody of affection that was, in reality, a spectacle of absolute domination.
What a
Lycinus
stingy
watched
host.
this performance
Such a
and
meager
understood.
fish.
This was
Hardly
not
enough
about
for a
love.
platter.
It was about power so immense it could warp reality itself, turning a boy into a wife, a human into a plaything. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that a similar fate was being considered for him. He saw it in the way Nero's gaze lingered on him, in the quiet conversations between the emperor and his physicians. The climax of his terror was not a single violent moment, but the slow creeping realization that his body was not his. It was a canvas upon which the emperor could paint his most depraved fantasies. He was to be altered, reshaped, and displayed, a testament to an emperor's power to unmake a man. He would be praised for his refinement, while being denied his humanity, his elegance a mask for unspeakable pain. Years passed. Lycinus was never made into another Sporus. His body spared the final brutal alteration. Perhaps the emperor grew bored, or another, more beautiful boy caught his eye. But the escape was only partial. He remained in the palace, a silent, graceful figure pouring wine at banquets, his face a carefully constructed mask of tranquility. He watched as favorites rose and fell, as intrigue coiled like a serpent in the gilded halls. He saw boys like him, once praised and paraded, discarded like broken toys the moment their youth began to fade or they caused the slightest displeasure. He lived in the emperor's shadow, a high-visibility ghost, admired and erased in the same breath. The name Lycinus was now a forgotten echo, a phantom of a life he barely remembered. He was a Delicatus, a beautiful, voiceless tragedy. And as he stood in the grandeur of the imperial court, a living ornament of silk and sorrow, he sometimes met the eyes of another boy across the room. In that shared glance, a universe of unspoken suffering passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of their shared fate, a story hidden in plain sight, not buried in the ground, but beneath the shimmering marble facade of the greatest empire the world had ever known.